Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Taste of Torah. Not the usual way I start things out, but, I'm having fun with YouTube and the internet and things like this. Okay, our Torah portion this week is Beha'alotcha. It's in the book of Numbers, and like most Torah portions, it's actually about a whole bunch of things simultaneously. So it's about installing the menorah in the portable sanctuary. It's about consecrating priests and Levites. It's about the giving of gifts. And it is about creating certain instruments. In this particular case, a set of silver trumpets, as well as a couple of important narrative stories in which Moses selects 70 elders to assist him in leading the community. And there is also the story of a power struggle between Moses and his siblings, all of whom are prophets. However, you know how I work. Sometimes I focus on big pictures. Sometimes I get very narrow in what I want to talk about. So I'm going to get narrow. I'm going to talk about one little passage in here and reflect on that particular passage. The passage is this. Let's see, it's number 1. V'yidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, asa lecha shtei hazotzrot kesev misha maaseh ota v'hayu lecha v'mikra ha'edah ulma'as ha'machanot. Or translate that. And then Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, have 2 silver trumpets made. Make them of hammered work, and they shall serve you to summon the community and to march the divisions. All right. I'm not particularly crazy about the JPS translation, but we'll talk about that. All right. Trumpets. Who knows for trumpets? We have shofarot. This is the traditional Jewish gig, right? The ram's horn. Yet here we actually have instructions to make out of metal materials, out of silver, long, thin trumpets or clarions to be used under certain circumstances. Now, this illustrates one of the interesting aspects of the Bible, its reception and its interpretation. And that is, depending on who you are, you focus on, emphasize, or ignore certain things. All right. So, the famous saying that I always like to quote is that Christians and Jews are 2 communities divided by a shared text. We all read the Bible, but we end up focusing on different things. And this is not simply a matter of translating certain things differently. Classic one is, of course, is Isaiah 7:14. Christians translate that verse as, and a virgin shall give birth, because that fits into the Christian narrative of the virgin birth and the unique origins of Jesus, their savior. Jews translate that same passage as a young woman shall give birth, which is not nearly as remarkable as a virgin. And we think it's a more justified translation. We can argue about that. But in any case, it's also the case that different communities focus on different things. So while Jews, we love our shofarot, Christians are fascinated with silver trumpets. For some reason, that captures their imagination in a way that the shofarot haven't until recently. Now more Christians like to buy shofars. Businessmen and Judaica shops and Israeli tourist traps sell tens of thousands of shofarot every year to non-Jews. But traditionally, Christians have loved those trumpets. You can see that if you go to Bass Hall. You go to Bass Hall over in Fort Worth, and what do you see? You see these fantastic Art Deco angels, and each one of them is holding this silver trumpet that is described here in our Torah portion. All right. You also can see it, for example, it's very common iconography in the Mormon church, the LDS community. They love images of the most important angel in their tradition, Moroni, blowing a silver clarion. Why do communities choose to emphasize selectively one thing over another? There's lots of reasons. Verses that Christians, for example, feel like hint at or point to Jesus become very central to them. Jews are much more interested in questions about what God does or doesn't want us to do, so we emphasize those verses, and that goes back and forth. But why trumpets versus shofars? I have no idea. I'm not sure. I mean, I could construe certain things. Maybe it's that the natural minimum modification that goes into a shofar represents, I don't know, Jewish grittiness, our connection to nature, our sense of being rough and ready. I'm making this up, right? Whereas the silver trumpet represents a kind of man-made purity or a distinction, something more ethereal than what is natural. Maybe that's it, but I really don't know. So I'm not going to explain that to you, but I am going to talk about the trumpets. That's really my focus, the one verse I read to you. Okay, so first of all, I want you to be aware that in Hebrew, there's a certain cadence to this. If you want to, you can go back, you can listen to me read it. And that cadence is very characteristic of the Hebrew Bible because it's a literary structure or device that we actually call Hebrew poetry. And that poetry is called parallelism. All right. Hebrew poetry, as we recognize it, does not have a meter. It doesn't rhyme. It doesn't follow a lot of the rules that we are familiar with in Western and especially English poetry, which has a great ability to rhyme. In Hebrew, rather, in ancient Hebrew, what we have are semantic rhymes or semantic parallelisms. So a certain idea will be expressed in the same way twice, or it will be compare and contrast at one end of a sentence to the other end of the sentence. And that gives the language a certain rhythm, which I think most of us have heard at some point. So, you know, you think of Psalm 121, it has a contrasting parallelism. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. So that's an opposing parallelism, right? Sun to moon, day to night. On the other hand, you might think of the poetry of Exodus 15. God has become my salvation and my redeemer. God is a man of war. God has a mighty right arm. All right. So the man of war, mighty right arm, God creates the parallelism. And the parallelism is here too, though you may not have spotted it. So let me call your attention to it. It's right here when it says, they shall serve you to summon the community and to set the camps in motion. All right. So the two parts are summoning and setting or putting into motion, and camps and community. All right. So it is a mini poem built into a single verse. Now, for a long time, people didn't recognize parallelisms. And the rabbis in particular, who were very aware that the Bible could be somewhat repetitive, actually developed a principle that said when two similar things are said, they're actually expressing a different point. So in rabbinic interpretation, there's no point to repetition. You're conveying two different ideas. All right. And so that's where we're going to go with this particular drosh this morning. All right. Because the two sides of what the trumpet does for us is it assembles the Edah and it ma'asa the machane. It puts it brings the community together and sends the camps into motion. All right. Now it's a Jewish commentator, of course, from the 20th century, Joseph Soloveitchik, one of the great thinkers of modern Orthodoxy, who said that these two elements represent the two aspects of being Jewish. And the first aspect is to put the camps into motion. Okay, the word machane, camp, works very much like the word camp in English. And so it can refer to going camping. It can refer to an outdoor gathering, but it also particularly has a military connotation, right? Machane refers to a military encampment. So Soloveitchik says that one aspect of the Jewish experience is for us to mobilize when we're under attack. To be Jewish is to recognize that the world is not a safe place. We live in a world unredeemed, and therefore we are menaced by different things. And when we are menaced, the Jews are summoned together to mobilize, to defend ourselves, to fight, to secure our safety and the safety of our families and our community. And that is an essential function. And it's sad. I think we're all a little sad all the time by the fact that we are sometimes besieged by different forces for reasons that's often hard to comprehend. What exactly have we done wrong that people are out to get us so much? But that is one of the important qualities of a Jewish community that makes our lives livable, is that we're willing to stand up for each other. And that's the first important thing. But the other one, Soloveitchik says, is to draw together or to assemble the community. Now, the word for community here, we talked about machane, let's talk about Edah. Edah or Adat. You know this from probably a synagogue you knew in your neighborhood at some time, Adat Chavarim, Adat Shalom, something like that. It means assemblage, congregation, community. It has a number of different meanings. But the intriguing thing is that it comes from the Hebrew root aid. Aid means to be a witness, to witness something. So the Edah is the gathering of witnesses or people who will witness. What are they witnessing? Well, Soloveitchik says witnessing on behalf of those most important Jewish values. So being Jewish is not just about the negativity of being an ethnic community under attack, that we have to stand with each other shoulder to shoulder against an evil world, but rather we also need to be equally ready to stand up for the things we value, the things we think are most important, to fight on behalf of not fight against the negativity, but to fight for something positive. So the two silver trumpets represent two sides of the Jewish experience. The Jewish experience of fate, that it's been our fate to sometimes be the target of outsiders, but it's also about being Jewish by faith, which is to say that we are Jews who are committed to a set of goals, positive things, desires we want to make realized in the world. And that God has given us the means, our silver trumpets, let's call it a metaphor now, by which we can do each of those things. And that's the Jewish community. That's us. We come together. We form institutions and groups and agencies and NGOs in order to make right the things in the world that are not wrong. So, as we head into the summer, let's think about that. We've been summoned to march for the Machane in recent weeks. Now we should ask ourselves, what should the assembled witnesses of Israel want to accomplish after all this is done? So that's my drosh for this week. And of course, I don't give you an answer to that last question. That's up to you. To be Jewish is to carve a path for yourself. Now, if you have something you want to do collectively, let's come together and let's work on it. And you don't need me and my fake silver trumpet to get you to come together. Just send a text. See you next week.